Hello developers, writers, and everyone who loves game design.
Welcome to DLC Not Included, our weekly podcast where we discuss game development, the industry, and everything in between.
We're your hosts, Steele
and Teal. Glad you could join us.
So this is the 5th episode of the revival of DLC Not Included.
And we have got a good topic today.
We do indeed. So the rules for those who are watching and are new, if you're watching this live, we are not monitoring chat. You all will be asking questions through the podcast question channel points redemption. It's only 50 points. That's 15 minutes of watching. And we'll be answering all the questions at the end. So, that being said, today's topic is testing your game, aka quality assurance.
Quality assurance.
That's right.
Now, a quick note before we get into it. The terms we're going to use, like game testing, quality assurance, quality assessment, and even quality control, these are all interchangeable.
Yes.
They all mean the same thing.
They absolutely do. In the industry, people banter all the time and use whatever term. Usually, though, it's just testing.
Right.
So, a quick history. So, back in the early days of game development, back in the Stone Ages, the developers themselves were the ones that did all the testing, and there was never really a QA. The idea of a QA process or a QA team, none of that really existed at the time. It came in as games got bigger and more complex. So, what happened back in the day was, hey, you had an Atari 2600 game. The guy who wrote the game tested the game.
Right.
Nowadays, you have entire departments whose sole jobs are to QA a game.
So that is why we have such an emphasis now on testing and quality assurance, because we have big teams now making these games. It's not just it's not just a one-man show. And yes, even an indie developer, you think you're a one-man show. There's actually a lot more people that work on your game, quote unquote. You use plugins. You have people who look at your game, give you advice. Well, they're all helping you.
Absolutely.
They all contribute. So yeah,
quality assurance goes well beyond the person who types the code nowadays. So the first part we're going to jump into is why test your game. And I almost feel like it's why do we have to answer that? Well, it goes beyond just otherwise your game has bugs.
Right. Yeah. Yes, because your game's going to have bugs no matter what. That's just how it is. You're going to have bugs.
There is no such thing as a perfect game. It does not exist. Yeah. Even if you are extremely precise in every aspect of your code, even if you vet every single plugin for compatibility, there's nothing you're going to do that's going to stop bugs from showing up. So you have to test. And there are different kind of bugs. People automatically think of bugs as the game crashes. That's not the case at all. Let's just go over a couple, Teal. There's like your coding bugs, like logical, mathematical, those kind. Your syntax bugs. Yeah,
which I think of a lot when we're bug testing. I'm like, oh yeah, the syntax.
I forgot to add a semicolon at the end of the sentence, and now my game explodes.
Yep.
Yes. But there's others. There's your resource bugs, like, does your game and the engine and everything handle CPU threads? Memory allocation. Does it attach to external libraries properly? That kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
There's more.
And then, of course, there's the writing bugs.
Yes.
Which, spelling and grammar. The context. Oh, my goodness. Yeah. Anything to do with writing. Yeah, you can have a bug there, too.
Yeah. You may write something meaning it for it to mean one thing, and then it means something else, and changes as Teal said, the entire context of the conversation.
Yep.
You have your asset bugs too.
Oh yeah.
Graphics could be bad. Music could mess up. Wrong file formats, right?
Yeah, we've seen music mess up.
You can have animation issues. What happens when the ragdoll physics go out of control?
Oh my gosh.
Right across the terrain, just all over the place.
All over.
If it's the Havoc engine, it comes with that annoying thumping sound too.
Yep. And then, of course, your content bugs.
Right.
What we mean by that is there's an issue with your story itself, or with character development, with scenes. Right. The scene just isn't running the way it's supposed to run.
It's giving the wrong message. It's moving the story in a direction you didn't want them to. It's giving too much or too little. Info dumps.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So the reason we brought all that up is because there are so many different types of bugs, and you as a developer have to test for each one.
All of them.
All of them. Because your game is likely going to fail upon release if you just don't do it.
Yeah. Because yes, the biggest thing is bugs. Bugs can absolutely inconvenience, disenfranchise, and break your player engagement, stop your player from enjoying the game. I mean, that's like the biggest one that I see about bugs.
Well, it is. That's the hugest issue, because let's say it either stops, the player can't enjoy the game. It breaks their enjoyment because something is so out of left field with either the bug or the content or whatever that they go, wait a minute. It breaks immersion.
That's a huge one, breaking immersion.
That's all big. Now, your game may or may not be able to run on certain hardware. So we're getting more into the technical side of things, you know.
Yeah, I mean, technically, you may be developing for one type of platform and your players want to play on a different type of platform.
Right, like, hey, this game works on the PC just fine, but then the Android and iPhone versions break completely.
Yeah.
Or I developed this game for the PS4 and Xbox console, but will it run on the Switch? That kind of thing.
Exactly. So basically, the industry fixes this by having compliance and compatibility testing.
Yeah, rigorous testing to see how the game runs on certain hardware setups, certain versions of Windows, etc., certain mobile platforms. And that is its own branch of QA.
That's its own little type of QA, a sub-department, if you will.
Exactly. Other ways the game can break. Let's see. Running for a long period of time.
I've done that.
People don't think about that, do they?
I've done that.
Yeah.
Yep.
What's that type of testing called?
It's called soak testing.
Yes. And developers don't usually think about that. But, you know, you need to have, like, on your start menu for 4 hours, your pause menu for 4 hours. Go to, like, the middle of, I'm going to pick on Skyrim. Go to the middle of Whiterun during the busiest time of the day and just sit there for 4 hours.
And just sit there.
In character. Go to the top of the Throat of the World where you can see all of Falkreathold.
Yes.
And just sit there for 4 hours and see if the game crashes. That's soak testing.
And I'm an expert in that.
Often overlooked.
Yeah,
Often overlooked.
Let me tell you something. People like me are going to do that.
Yeah, and speaking of overlooked bugs, Teal, most people don't realize that fixing a bug often creates other bugs.
Yeah.
And in the industry, it's called halo testing. So think of it like a ring that comes out from the big issue, like a halo, a ring. So, you know, you have your central bug that you fixed, maybe going in and out of the vehicle, the animation was broken.
Yeah.
And now that you've got it working, now you have the other issues of they can't go to the artillery.
Yeah.
You know, they can't actually drive. They can't get out. So you test all of those through halo testing. So a QA team, once the main bug is fixed, will then test every possible peripheral around it.
Exactly.
Yes. Online games can have problems too.
Online games will generally run into the not being able to handle large numbers of players. You know, server load exceeded.
Yes,
and it crashes.
It crashes hard. And if you're playing a game as a service or an online game or an MMO, and your server crashes, you're done, son.
Yep.
And maybe a lot of our listeners have heard of that. That's called load testing.
Load testing.
And a lot of MMOs will do load testing prior to launch, where they'll have an open beta and they'll say, everyone just get onto the server.
Get on.
Peak hour, you know, from 4 to 8, we're going to test the servers, and we want as many people on. Log your alts on. You know, get on every tune, as they call it, that you can get on, and just see if it breaks the servers.
Exactly.
But there's many more. I mean, we could go and do an entire episode of this, an entire podcast talking about the types of bugs.
Well, we could, but we just wanted to hit the main bugs that you're likely going to encounter as a developer. Right.
And of course, when we talked about the content bugs earlier, that's its own separate issue of learning good story writing, storytelling, etc.
That's it.
Lastly, it's really considered to be poor game development to release a bug-ridden game to the general public. It garners you a negative reputation.
Yes, it
faster
does.
Than your content being questionable.
Yeah.
You could have a game that is quote-unquote edgy, quote-unquote controversial, and people are going to be less likely to blast it to pieces than if it's a bug-ridden, crashy, broken mess.
Yeah, because we know players will remember the bad stuff about the game more than the good stuff.
It's so very true.
That is just true anywhere. People are going to remember the bad before they remember the good.
You know, often with Studio Blues, different streams and podcasts, we pick on the company of Bethesda. The reason we do that is because Bethesda's bugs at this point have become a trope and a meme.
They have. It's sad, isn't it?
And it is sad because we love their games, yet they're known for having buggy-ass games.
Yeah.
So you can get there. You could become a meme, and not a positive meme, if your games are constantly buggy. Your reputation is super important, isn't it, Teal?
Yes, it is, especially when you're starting out. You're trying to build your cred, your reputation. So that's all you have. That's your biggest asset. So you want to do everything you can to have a really good product and build your positive reputation.
That's right. Now, we're going to go into the game testing best practices that we recommend. This is not going to be an exhaustive list at all, and it comes with a very important note, doesn't it?
No, we're not talking about the tissue testing.
Right.
That's what's referred to as first reactions.
Right.
Okay,
you get people who've never played the game before. What's their reaction? That's called a tissue test.
That's tissue test, right? Yeah. We're also not going to be talking about focus group testing.
Right.
Okay. And y'all know what focus groups are. It's just a bunch of people and...
like an open forum.
Yeah, an open forum.
And they play the game, and then you sit down and you say, okay, you 10 people who played the game for 5 hours, what are your thoughts? We'll touch very briefly on a version of focus group, but we're not going to go into how you do that.
No. So instead, we're going to be talking about it's bug testing. Beta testing, in other words. Beta testing your bugs during your beta.
Right.
Okay. And we say beta testing because we recommend that you do your bug tests during the beta phase.
Right. You're gonna be dealing with the small bugs the entire development cycle.
Absolutely. You're never not going to find a bug somewhere.
Right. But the beta testing is when you crunch the bugs and you work really hard non-stop. Okay, that's super important. Bug testing is the blanket fixing bugs. Beta testing is that hardcore push during the beta phase. And before we go any further, if you're listening to this looking for the standard model used in the industry for bug testing, we are so sorry to disappoint you.
There's no standard model.
There is none. It's every company, every group, every developer, whether they be indie or AAA, has a different way of doing it.
Because testing, the way you test, depends on the size of your team, the complexity of your game.
That's right.
And even your release schedule.
And of course, your financial resources. Can you afford a department? Can you afford a 20-person team, a 5-person team, one competent bug tester?
Right.
All of those will determine your methodology. So let's just jump in, Teal. Let's jump in and talk about the one piece of advice we recommend the most, which is a separation.
Yes, separate your QA tests for your play tests.
Yes.
A QA test is not a play test.
No, the QA tests are your bug tests where you are literally just searching for the bugs. While the play test is playing the game for the experience, like the visuals, the audio, story, characters, gameplay loop, etc. Two totally different things. And I can't tell you, how many times Teal and I have dealt with a developer that tries to test both at the same time. And that is a recipe for missing something and generally some kind of a disaster.
Don't do it.
No.
You test for bugs or test for play.
Right.
Please don't combine the two.
Do not combine the two. Whenever we stream someone's game or play someone's game online for, whether it be on one of our live streams or videos, we tell them we are not your bug testers. Because we're play testing.
Yes.
Studio Blue specifically play tests. You can find people who will look for bugs when they see them, and any competent play tester online is going to say, okay, that's obviously a bug. But they're not crunching for your bugs, they're crunching for your content.
Yeah.
So to go to the bugs, there are 3 types. What are the 3 types of bugs? Well,
the bugs, we generally, over the years, we've kind of, I say the industry, has categorized them in 3 different levels. A bugs.
Right.
Those big ones. These are the critical bugs that break a game.
Yes.
Absolutely will break it.
Yes.
And these are the bugs that you have to focus the most attention on. Because your game will not run without it.
Right.
Without fixing them.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the B bugs.
Right.
Okay, those are major issues. They don't necessarily break your game,
Right.
but they need to be addressed because they are so obvious and take the player right out of the experience.
Right out.
Yeah. And then your C bugs are minor bugs that may or may not be too obscure to catch if you're on a tight schedule, but a really good QA team will search for them, will catch them, and fix them.
And they often can be highly specific. Let me give an example.
Yeah, give a good example.
So an A bug would be let's go with an open world adventure. An A bug, you enter into a dungeon and the game crashes.
Yeah.
That's an A bug.
That's an A bug.
So something about that dungeon, whether it be resource allocation, the renderer, a script that runs, just straight up crashes the game. That's an A bug.
Yeah.
A B bug would be you go into that dungeon to do a quest, and then you go up to the doorway, and that doorway only opens when you're on the quest. Otherwise, it's this door cannot be opened at this time.
Yeah.
You're on the quest, the door doesn't open. That's a B bug.
Yeah.
It's not going to break the game, but it breaks the quest.
Yes, it breaks the quest.
And a C bug would be something like if you go to that dungeon, starting that quest, when you have this other item that you got from this other quest, the door opens, but then you hear a line of dialogue from an NPC related to the item that you have that had nothing to do with the quest you're on.
Ah, yes.
Super specific.
Very specific.
But still a bug.
But that's a bug. That's a C bug.
That is a C bug. So knowing the difference between the three, it really helps.
It does.
Because squash those A bugs, then get those B bugs. Don't ignore those C bugs. Let's jump over to playtesting for a second. Back to playtesting.
Oh, the playtesting.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Well, we said, and we'll continue to say, playtesting is playing the game for the player experience. And the player experience is more than just visual and audio.
Right.
Okay. It's the story progression, characters, character development. It's the gameplay loop, game flow, all those things.
Which, just to make sure you understand, the gameplay loop is the moment-to-moment thing the player does to play the game and how it pulls them into and keeps them in the game. The game flow is like critical paths through a level, going from point A to point B, the checkpoints over the course of a chapter. That's game flow.
Yeah.
And these are all contextual. Every single playtest bug and playtest issue is contextual. And they almost always require a third party.
Absolutely. You need another set of eyes to go through this and point out where things are going wrong. Your own eyes aren't going to catch it. You have seen this. You've done it. This is your baby. You're not going to catch the mistakes. You're just not.
There's an old saying, you can't see the forest for the trees.
Yeah.
Well, we actually have another saying, you can't see the forest for the green. You are so immersed in what as Teal said, your baby.
Yeah.
You are not going to see those contextual issues. So get a third party.
It's all about it's like proofreading.
Yes.
If you've been through school, you have a proofreader. It's another set of eyes looking at your work. A fresh set of eyes.
Fresh set of eyes.
They'll pick out things you weren't aware that there was a problem.
Right.
And they'll point it out to you to fix them.
So the two differences are when you're looking for a QA tester, you want to look for somebody who's qualified. Somebody who knows what they're doing for bug testing and either has a good history of it or that, to quote Dogma, your anal retentive attention to detail.
Yeah.
When you want to do a play tester, when you're looking for that, reach out to members of your community.
Right.
If you're an Unreal developer, the Unreal community. A Unity developer, the Unity community. The RPG community, the RPG developers for the RPG community.
Yeah.
All of that. Look out for those people who are familiar with your style, your engine, the world that your game is built upon.
Right.
On an engine level.
Level.
And get them to do it. Reach out to the streamers on Twitch and YouTube, like Studio Blue, free plug, of course, or contract helpers with experience in the field. This is where you want to diversify. QA testers, very specific. Play testers, different people.
Yeah.
With different outlooks and different views on how characters, story, setting, etc. should go.
Because for playtesting, you want to elicit as much diverse feedback as you can. Because this is representative of the real world, your game being out there. And all these different types of people are going to be coming in, looking at your game, plunking down their cash and playing it.
Right. So you want to have the most representative slice of the general populace, which is a smaller version of the general populace.
Yeah.
So if you're going to have your game released to 500,000 people, get 500 people, 50 people to play your game. It'll give you a good sampling of issues you may have with your player experience. Let's move on.
Okay, so let's talk. Let's really do a deep dive into bug testing.
Oh yeah.
Things that you want to focus on when you're bug testing.
This is where a lot of indie developers, especially the new ones, make a massive, sometimes fatal mistake. They try to bug test the whole game. And and the thing is we don't usually preach this when we're doing our streams because we're not talking about bug testing. Well, we are now.
Yeah.
The best thing you can do is to take small micro slices of your game for bug testing.
Yeah.
Levels, safe zones, that'd be like a town, a boss fight, etc., and go through it over and over and over again. Exhaustively.
Yeah. Not once, not twice. 6 times.
8
times.
Right. Yeah. Dozens
of times.
Until you are sick of it.
Yep.
That's why a lot of people who say, hey, I want to be a play test. I want to be a bug tester, a beta tester for my career. That's awesome. I get paid to play video games. And you don't know what you're getting into, Hoss.
No, that's not, You're
going to be playing that same level over and over again for about a week.
Uh-huh.
Good luck, man. So yeah, you have to take the small micro slices. Take your game and slice it up into little parts. If you're doing a 25-hour RPG, forest here, bug test that. The boss test at the end of the forest, that's a separate bug test.
Yes, it is.
The town afterwards, the dungeon underneath the town.
Yeah.
Those are all separate slices. Micro slices.
Yeah, you're going to have hundreds of micro slices in your game, and each one of them has to be thoroughly explored and tested.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you want to check for anything that can be wrong. You want to check for controls, graphics, balancing, audio, everything we mentioned and more.
Everything.
Again, you're not checking for the game. You're not checking for how the level made you feel.
No.
You're checking for like a spelling mistake. You're checking for, hey, you go up against this wall, you can walk through the wall.
Uh-huh.
Those kind of things.
You want to spend more time testing that small slice than you ever did developing it.
Yeah, absolutely. If you spent 5 hours developing a dungeon, spend 25 hours testing it.
Uh-huh.
We're throwing out numbers here.
We're throwing out numbers, but that's to give you an idea of how much time you need to spend on testing relative to development.
Yes, absolutely. Get a tester if you can. If you can afford it, or can work out some kind of an arrangement, get a tester or a group of testers, people specifically who are good at bug testing. And
not just any Joe Schmo.
Right.
Please vet your testers before you release them onto your game. You want people who are experienced, who have a proven track record.
If you can pay them, then
I would pay them.
Yeah, hire them.
Hire them because you're going to get more bang for your buck.
Yes.
If what I say, you get what you pay for.
You get what you pay for, yeah. Now, we're not saying that there are free testers out there in your community who do it because they love it. Those are golden people.
Those are golden people.
Treat them like they are the Sultan themselves.
Yep.
Because that's rare. Most of the time, you're going to shell out some cash, but it's worth it. Make sure, of course, they have nothing to do with the development of the game.
Yeah.
At all.
At all.
Like they've never been on the development team. They're not the guy who did your audio. They're not the guy who did your programming.
No.
Nobody.
Totally separate people. Total strangers who you pay to come in and find all the stuff that's wrong with your game.
And make sure they also don't mind forms because they're going to be filling out bug reports. And we went over this in a creator classroom.
a few months ago or last year. Yeah, back in the day. Guys, bug testers have to fill out bug reports.
They do.
If they're not, you need to cut them loose.
Yes.
That is not the point. The bug testing, you have to log.
That's right.
And use a standardized form so that every single one of your bug testers are filling out the exact same form.
And they have to use it for even the smallest bugs possible.
If a semicolon is out of place, they need to log down that report. You know, it's all about the details.
That's right. And you want to slowly overlap the slices as the bug testers work on them. So if you have a bug tester working on a boss fight and another bug tester working on the level in which that boss fight is contained, then you want to slowly overlap them and see, okay, so now we go from point A to point B to the boss fight. How does that react? How does that go?
How does it flow? Does it work? Is it seamless?
Right.
If it's not seamless,
then there's something you need to fix.
You need to fix it.
And we talked about the bug reports, and Teal mentioned logging. Have a log. The bug reports can be online or paper. It doesn't matter. But keep a log. Just keep a log of everything.
Yes.
You want to track every single one of your bugs, even the smallest ones possible. And you want to differentiate between the bugs and the changes.
Yes.
They're not the same thing. A bug is something that's wrong with the game, while a change is a modification to the original content, usually in response to playtesting.
Usually in response, yeah.
This feature isn't working the way it should. We need to alter that feature. So we're going to do like a change request.
Yeah.
So we're going to track that change, and the change is going to, fix that feature or alter that feature.
Yeah.
Then you get the bug testers to test everything affected by that feature again to make sure that changing the feature didn't generate more bugs. Really, honestly, there should be QA testers that call themselves the exterminators.
I would hire them. Absolutely. But so we've talked about the bug testing.
Yes.
Everything about it. Let's focus on play testing.
Play testing, which people seem to enjoy more because it's just playing the game, but it's not.
And we're just going to talk about play testing just to give you an idea of the juxtaposition of play testing to bug testing.
Right, because it is part of testing your game, but is a monster very different from bug testing.
Yeah.
But there's a similarity. Bug testing and play testing, you want to focus on one thing at a time.
Yeah. So bug testing is it's one area, it's one room. The other room is play testing. So when you're play testing, you want to focus on one thing at a time instead of the entire game.
You're going to see us contradict everything that we do in about a little bit because we just said focus on one thing and not the entire thing.
Yeah.
So go ahead. Let's talk about what we need to focus on.
Okay, so for playtesting, you focus on, you want to test a level.
Right.
You want to test the boss fight. Test the tutorial.
You want to test for your story. Test for your characters and their development. Test for the setting in the world.
And let's talk about the other features. Test your visuals, your music, your UI.
Yeah.
All those interfaces.
Yeah, everything. The pause menu, the start menu, the game over menu. All those little features that make the game what they are, and all the little parts of the user experience from the moment they start to the moment they stop.
Exactly.
That's all play testing. And you want to test one thing at a time. Play test a game for its visuals. How do the visuals work?
Yep.
Play test the game for the audio. So don't worry about the visuals. Someone else is handling that. How does it sound?
How does the game sound? Is the music appropriate? Is it too loud? Is it too soft? Is it janky? Are your sound effects, are they in and out? Are they appropriate, inappropriate?
Exactly. And when you're play testing, you want to ask very specific questions. It's not a broad, do you like this game?
No, it's not. That's not the point of this.
Right. Again, contradiction incoming.
Does this work for the specific instance that it's used?
Right. What do you think of this fight? What does that character make you feel when they have a certain development point? How
does that music fit the level?
Yeah.
If you're going through, let's say, a burned out city, you're not going to be playing classical music.
No, you're not. I mean, it's just Why would someone play Flight of the Bumblebee when going through the devastated city after the mega attack?
There you go. Yeah, that's a good example. Yeah.
And a quick side note before we get to that contradiction that I've been talking about. Never explain away, never justify anything in your game while watching someone play test it.
Dude, they're helping you out.
Yeah.
Okay? You may be paying them, but they're doing you a favor.
They really
by
are.
giving their time to find the issues and fix your game. Okay? So let's listen to what they have to say and don't sit there and justify yourself to them.
Don't do it. Don't do it. And we talked about this in multiple podcasts, multiple streams, multiple classrooms. If you are lucky enough that a live streamer is going to play your game, technically play testing, while your game is under development or in beta, and you're in the chat, the only time you should talk is if you're answering a question or if they get stuck and they need your help. But then if they get stuck, you notate, this particular tester got stuck here. This may be an issue to revisit. If
Again, your log.
Right. If they go, hey, I don't understand why this character did this. That doesn't make any sense to me. Or that makes this character unlikable. Don't justify it.
Write it down.
Yeah.
Write down what they're talking about, where they're talking about it happening, and just make all your notes.
So now, the contradiction.
Here we go.
Because earlier we were talking about when you're playtest one thing at a time. Have someone playtest for music, visuals, story, etc. That is not what Studio Blue does when it live streams a game. That is not what any of the streamers do when they live stream a game in development. They do something different.
They do what we call holistic playtesting.
Right.
Okay. And that is playing the game in its entirety from start to finish in one go, pretty much.
Commenting on everything. When we do a holistic playtest, we are playing a game and we're talking about the characters, the storytelling, whether the setting looks good, any visuals. Hey, I really like the music in this dungeon. Or, hey, this battle music is too low and doesn't seem to fit. Those graphics, they look like they don't fit this particular theme of your game. Or, this looks like this is from one art pack, and that looks like that's from the other. And while that's wonderful, and while we hope that Studio Blue and other live streamers can help you, holistic playtesting is not good playtesting.
No.
It isn't.
It should only be used in the late beta phase of your game. When you're looking for someone to give an opinion on your game in its entirety.
Think of it like a open level focus group. It's a lot like
It's a lot like focus group testing. Yeah, it is.
And that's what we do in the RPG Maker community. We will tell someone, hey, your game is under development. Send it to Studio Blue. Send it to Driftwood Gaming. Send it to Hawk Zombie. Send it to Hard Reset. Send it to Jack of All Ops. Send it to all these people. Well, they'll play your game and comment on it. That, what we call, again, holistic playtesting is not the playtesting you need to fix your big issues with your story, your characters. If someone catches an issue that ends up being, hey, this rips your story apart, that's wonderful. Yeah. But don't rely on it.
No, as we said, this type of play testing should only be used in your late beta. Yeah. When you're about to go gold.
Right.
When you've already been through all of your QA and bug testing and all that other stuff we talked about prior to this.
Because regardless of how good they are, and again, we are contradicting everything that we do on live stream. So hopefully we won't lose too many subs. Those type of tests are going to miss something.
Of course they are.
Something
because they're being asked. Since they're being asked to do way too much. Yeah. Okay. There's only so much that we can catch as Let's Players.
Exactly.
As first impressionists. Yeah. So, there's going to be a lot of stuff that we miss. And as Steele said, that's you don't want to rely on people like us to dig into all the minutia of what could be wrong with your game.
Right. Now, you could get a group like Studio Blue if they're willing to do it. Sometimes you'll pay for people to do this, where they'll go offline and deep dive. And they'll play the game and they'll go through a real story set. They'll just play the game for the story. They'll play the game for the characters. And then they'll go and they'll say, okay, here's my write-up on your story. Here's my issues with your story. Here's where it's good. Here's where it needs improvement. Characters, same thing. Setting, same thing. Graphics, audio.
But as you said, that is an offline deep dive.
Yes.
And that's someone who is willing to put in the time and the effort to play through your game with a critical eye.
And people will do it. Studio Blue does it.
Yeah.
But it's a contract. It's not the same as, let's play our game online and have fun with it.
Exactly.
Those are for getting everyone's analysis. So you send it out to as many live streamers as possible. The chat gives their opinion. The live streamer gives their opinion. And you generally will get a good feel, if your game is in late beta, of things you need to fix before you go cold.
Sure. But unfortunately, too many new indie developers, they only focus their testing and analysis on this type of testing, the holistic play testing. And that's unfortunate because 9 times out of 10, their game is going to have all these issues. It's going to launch and it's going to just fall flat on its face. It's going to suck.
Oftentimes, we talk about the game Phasmophobia. And Phasmophobia is relying on its early access, which we talked about that last time.
Yeah, we did.
And relying on its testers, its players, to fix issues on a holistic level.
Yeah.
While there are some times that a game developer can get away with that, especially if their game becomes massively popular, it can be a way of shooting yourself in the foot. And we recommend do that play testing bit, piece at a time, offline. Then when you're ready, then bring it out to the public, and if people want to stream it and come up with more ideas, and you go, hey, this is great, and you basically fix by committee, that's okay. That's okay. It's all about don't rely on them to fix everything, but allow them to get to the late stage.
I don't want to, beat a point to death, but these holistic testers are not your QA department.
They're not. They should be wrapping up your testing and giving an overall analysis, not your QA.
Yeah.
All right. So now that we've gone over that, let's talk about some things to avoid, because there's some things you really want to avoid.
What we call common pitfalls, if you will, of the developer.
Oh boy.
And here's the one that we always talk about. It's not a bug, it's a feature.
Oh my goodness. If I had a nickel for every time someone said that is a justification for a screw up, I would probably have quite a bit of money. And that's a lot because they're nickels.
Yeah.
So misunderstandings occur.
Yes,
they occur all the time. A lot of times, you'll be playing the game or watching someone play your game, and they'll be like, holy crap, that's a bug. And you're like, no, that's meant to happen like that. That happens. But don't rely on that as an excuse to do nothing. Because when a tester says, hey, X, you need to take notice of X, regardless of whether or not it was intended. Because if your player reports a feature as a bug, then either the player didn't read your instructions, which is possible, or the feature isn't properly introduced as a feature. And
I would go into it with the option 2 as my mindset.
Yes.
Rather than option 1. Because if it's something that can be fixed, you can fix it. Absolutely.
And if you find out later on it's because the play tester or the player or whom did not read your instructions, and you can address it. And if it's a QA tester who's saying, hey, this is a bug, and you go back and it's very well documented and all your QA testers know that's a feature, then you can talk to that person and say, well, is this right for you? Because you weren't reading the documentation.
Right. And again, here we go back. The importance of logging everything. All your documentation.
So what's a good example? Can we think? We wrote down an example of a feature and a bug.
Okay. Actually, yeah. Let me pull up on one that I like to use. Okay. So let's say that a character is supposed to be able to do a double jump.
Right.
This happens a lot to me in games. But when in the water, they can't double jump in the water because, water. Now, if that's not somehow, I don't know, communicated to the player, told to the player, and they report it as a bug, then you, the developer, you have to change how that information is presented. Okay? You have to change it. let the player know that double jumping doesn't work in water.
Right.
Don't just declare the player is wrong.
No, that's not right. Because maybe it needs to be a tutorial. Mm-hmm. Maybe it needs to be in your manual.
Exactly.
Something to where the player will know this is not a bug. It is literally a feature. Your character cannot double jump while in the water.
Yeah.
And then it's fine. However, make sure you are treating it as if it's a bug first.
Yes.
And only saying the player is a dumb at the very end when there's nothing else.
When there's nothing else that can be done when you've ruled everything out.
All of it. Okay. All of it. Another huge pitfall is do not overly defend your design choices.
Oh, yes. Yes.
We are not talking about justification to belligerent testers who have no understanding of your game, because you're going to find people...
You're going to encounter that.
...who have literally no idea what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
They're playing your game. They don't understand what the game is. They don't understand the genre. Like, let's say that you have a Souls-like game, like Dark Souls.
Yeah.
And you have someone who's expecting Breath of the Wild. Then they're going to go in with a negative preconception.
Yeah.
And a lot of their criticism is going to be based off the preconception. However, that is a lot less than you think. That is the exception.
It is the exception, not the rule.
Most people who talk about your design choices are people who literally are saying, this is either breaking the game, breaking the experience, taking me out of the immersion, it makes me not want to play this game, etc. If one person does it, okay, take note of it. Don't discount it. Don't defend it. Just take note, hey, this tester here found this character to be unredeemable.
Right.
However, if enough players report that feature, design choice, etc. as an issue, then consider changing it.
Yeah, because, the more people point this one thing out, then the probability of that one thing being broken is pretty high.
Yeah, the more people who say it's an issue, it's probably an issue. However, you are the developer. And at a certain point, you need to trust your development skills. Mm-hmm. And if during the course of a game, someone does something very unredeemable, but later on, they're going to be maybe not completely redeemed, but redeemed enough that the player can tolerate them, then trust your skills.
Yeah.
Ramsay Bolton, a.k.a. Ramsay Snow.
Ramsay Snow,
an absolutely unredeemable character, but there are moments where he becomes tolerable.
Yeah.
And in those moments, you have to trust George R.R. Martin's writing. Mm-hmm. And George R.R. Martin had to trust his writing.
Yeah.
So just remember, at a certain point, you have to say to yourself, I'm the developer. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to let it ride. Mm-hmm. However, don't attack or overly defend. Just
ignore and move on.
Right.
Seriously, you don't have to sit there and fight. Every fight is not the good fight.
No.
Just the point is to, what's the point? Remember what your point is. To deliver the best possible game to your players.
And if you spend more time defending your game than developing your game, you're shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
We're getting near the end, by the way, so if you have those podcast questions, start getting them out while we finish up this particular conversation. Remember, it's only 50 channel points, which is 15 minutes. Click on the little slime and get your questions ready. We have more, though.
We do. Here's another thing to avoid. Okay, ignoring your sea bugs. Okay, I know as developers, we all tend to focus on those game-breaking A bugs and those immersion-breaking B bugs.
Yes.
But let me tell you, those C bugs, they're going to break your experience over time. They really will.
They really will.
People are going to get so annoyed with going up to the door with the magic purple hammer on the other side, an NPC is talking about
the cup of plenty.
Yes.
I mean,
really?
Sea bugs build up, and while some of them can become meme-worthy and hilarious, like the floating guard,
yes,
in Whiterun, after a while, people are going to tend to take you less seriously.
Yeah.
They do add up. People don't think they do.
They do.
Add up.
And then there goes your reputation. And what have we been talking about this whole time? Your reputation.
It's all you got.
Yeah.
It's all you got. So here's one piece of advice that Teal and I came up with. about your C bugs. We recommend you consider this. Lump all of your C bugs, all of them, over the course of your bug testing, etc. Lump them all together. And then take care of that massive lump during the late beta or gold phase.
Before launch.
Very important you understand. People think gold means launch.
It doesn't.
Gold is the final few steps prior to launch. It's when a game goes gold, you're getting everything ready for your launch date. It's like 30 days.
Yeah.
You know, so get all those C bugs together and either in the late beta or the gold prior to launch, pre-launch. Take care of them.
Take care of it.
Take care of them. And, you know, then do some halo testing around each one just to make sure that fixing that C bug doesn't cause more C bugs.
Right.
And then that's it. But try not to do it after launch. Too many AAA companies do that.
Yeah.
And it's annoying because at that point you're treating, one, you're saying you don't care about quality to your players.
Yeah.
Second, you're not going to pick on them again. You're treating your players as your beta testers. And what do we say over and over again? Your players
are not your beta testers.
Ever. All right. So now it's time for us to take questions from our live audience.
If you've been watching, remember to use that poll question feature in chat.
Right. We can't see chat, but we can see the poll question.
Yes, we can. So do we have a question?
We do.
Here we go.
Okay, so from Rack, thank you much for the question. Outside of application testing, what about unit testing and integration testing on those units? As if you have better code coverage, you can save QA bugs. This is all part of testing out and working with your stuff while you're developing. You should always be testing while you develop, no matter what. So, you know, you can cut down on QA issues if your code has, you know, if your code's stronger.
Yeah.
If your code has better libraries. If you have people working on those libraries, I think that's what Rack is asking.
Yeah.
While you're developing. So if you can take care of stuff while you're developing, then it cuts down on QA in general.
Sure,
and
it
saves
does.
you a lot of heartache. It goes to the proper prior planning prevents piss poor performance.
There it is, yeah.
Hopefully, Rack, we've answered your question properly. If not, pop another one and clarify.
Yeah.
Do we have any more questions?
Yes, we have one from Burke.
All right.
What should be any additional considerations, if any, for
Escalonged? You're going to have to define that.
Escalated playtesting?
I think so, yeah.
That is, if a game is divided by chapters, testing the game either cumulatively to a save to run its current.
Okay. Regardless of how your game is divided, you need to be testing piece by piece by piece, and then the whole thing.
Yes.
You know, bit by bit by bit, and then
the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, slowly widen it. Out.
Yeah.
You know, so start with your level, and then test how your level connects to the other level, and then et cetera, et cetera. So you're doing slice, 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 then bigger slice, bigger slice, bigger slice. Biggest slice, whole game. Do it like that. If your game is episodic, as in each episode is its own release,
like Final Fantasy VII Remake,
then you work more, or Xenosaga was like that. Then just work on how they connect.
Yeah.
And treat each episode as its own individual project.
There we go. Yeah.
You know, so hopefully that is also what Burke was asking. Burke had a little issue with his inner key because that word got cut off. If you have any other questions, or if you want to clarify the questions you have, please ask more.
Or if you have follow-up questions.
Absolutely. QA testing requires a lot of work. We understand that. It is the unfun part of development. Just like in writing, revisions are the unfun part of writing.
Yeah.
However, they're absolutely necessary.
And I want to say this, just like in writing, you can really refine and get a much better game product through extensive QA and bug testing.
Yes, absolutely.
Because you never get anything, you don't get your final product on your first draft.
Okay.
So
you never do.
Yeah.
And anyone who thinks that they do is shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah.
I think I've said that like 6 times this stream.
6 times at least.
Okay, so Rack is qualifying.
Okay.
Rack is saying more referring to automated testing unit tests, such as a testing program that runs functions of your game He's talking about using an AI or some sort of application to test.
Sure, yeah.
Okay. So thank you for the clarification there, Rack. You should use it because it's a tool.
It is a tool.
Use tools, but don't rely on them as your only source. While a program can do repetitive tasks over and over again and give you valuable data, an application is not a human being. And a human being will always be able to think in variables outside of quote-unquote programming, while an application cannot.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Yeah.
Now, granted, as artificial intelligence and those applications built on those concepts get stronger, they may be able to branch out a little bit using various types of learning and going, okay, so this new thing that I've considered, how does that work? Okay, now I can change a little bit about how I'm testing this one function. But we're not there where you can just turn on an application testing program and bug test your game. We are not there. However, can it be used as a starting point and automate to make it life simpler on you?
Sure.
And you should. If you have access to that tool, it's a tool. It's just like a debugger.
Yeah.
Back in the day, people used to use C++ debuggers. I've used C++ debuggers. You can rely on them.
Yeah.
You can rely on them, but they were just a tool. They weren't what fixed your game. Same thing here.
Yeah.
Same thing here.
Same thing there.
Very good question, Rack, and hopefully everyone who's listening to this podcast will take to heart that if you can use a tool to make your life easier, use it, but don't rely on it.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions? We do.
Yeah, from Ventus.
All right.
What makes the difference between AAA bug testing and indie game bug testing? What does each industry get right or wrong?
That is a fantastic...
That's a really good question, and a pretty big one, too.
Yes. The biggest difference, like if you want to look at it from the helicopter overview, is the size.
Yeah.
AAA bug testing teams can rank in the hundreds. They can be they can be departments.
Yes.
And you could have departments literally on things like testing the engine, testing, the levels, testing certain mechanics. It can go pretty big because they have these huge budgets.
Yeah, they do. And that's what I was going to say is the... No, you're fine. Is the budget.
Yes.
AAA is going to have a much bigger budget than your indie game studio.
Yes.
So budgets can fund departments. So that's what you said. So.
But there's a positive flip side to this.
Yeah.
Indie game developers, and whether it be a solo developer or a small indie team, can focus on quality QA testers. Yes. They're going to have less. Yes, there's going to be less overhead, less cost, less people, which can be a negative. But they can get people who are really good at that type of game.
Yeah.
That type of engine. That type of gameplay, and can really get them to focus on that project.
Also, you have a limited number of hands touching your game.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more control over the directions of your game, how it's going. You have more control over it, I think, and there's less cooks in the kitchen.
Yes.
So less opportunity to mess something up because two departments don't talk to each other.
Right.
So that's where I'm kind of going with that.
And speaking of talking to each other, if it's a small team like an indie team with, let's say, 5 QA testers, okay, the developers, the main developers, can talk more one-on-one with those QA testers and get potentially very specific feedback.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, they can.
You're not going to get that with a massive team. With a massive team, you're going to have a meeting with the QA managers. And they're going to go over, here's the bug reports that we had. We've updated the change log here, and here. And the head programmer and the head level designer, the leads, are going to be sitting there. And it's very detached.
It is detached, yeah.
When you have a big team, you remove a lot of the humanity element. And also you have communication issues because they're going through those layers of management.
Yes. All that.
Small team, much more intimate. So what does each one do right and what does each one do wrong? It's a trade-off. AAA is going to have massive amounts of hands and eyes on it and probably catch a lot more bugs. Indie is going to have a lot more personalization to the fixes. Very good question. Do we have any more? Because we're getting close to the end, everyone.
Well, remember, it's only 50 slime points.
Right, which is 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
And we've had some really, really good questions this time.
Yeah, we have.
They were very thought-provoking. All four of them, all three of you all asked amazing questions. And that's one of the things we really like about this podcast, is that we get very thoughtful questions from our audience.
Yes.
So if we don't have another question, we're going to go ahead and end the podcast. I want to say something before we close it for the night.
Okay, sure.
It cannot be understated how important quality assurance game testing is.
Yeah.
Again, it's not the fun part. This is the unfun part of development, but it is one of, if not the most essential parts of being a developer. You got to do it.
This refines your game into its final awesome state.
And the better it is, the better your quality control is,
the better your game, and the more popular it's going to be.
Absolutely. We hope you all have had a wonderful time, both listening live and listening on VOD.
Yeah.
This is up on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Music, SoundCloud, etc. And we're grateful that you all could join us. So yes, let's go ahead and say that we're done for today.
Okay.
All right. So join us next time on DLC Not Included, and remember,
anyone can give you the key, but you have to go through the door.